Hello everybody, and welcome back. With it being October, and the horror atmosphere being in the air that comes with this month, I thought, what better to start with for the content this month than analog horror? And returning viewers to the channel know I talk about analog horror a good bit. I've talked about a good few series in my time here on YouTube, but the topic we're covering today is probably the closest to a traditional analog horror that I've covered. And this would be the series of Basswood County. It has a lot of VHS tape type videos, PSAs, radio warnings, things like that. And well, I'm sure many are actually sick of tropes and cliches being present in analog horror. I know a good part of it has become a joke in the analog horror community. I think Basswood County is very good, and I think at times the cliches it presents sort of add to it. I'm not going to get too much into those now. I'll talk about it more at the end of this video when reviewing the series as a whole. But overall, I think Basswood County is good, even if it does have a lot of those cliches and tropes in it. And I feel that they're utilized better in this series than they are some other series. But like I said, we're going to talk about that later. First, I just want to talk about the series and the 7 episodes that make it up, because overall, Basswood County I found to be a great series. I watched it all in one sitting upon my initial viewing, just sitting on the couch on my laptop watching it, and ultimately I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I was going to. And I'm hoping you will too. It's about these humanoid monsters that sort of attack this small town. Of course, it deals with terrifying themes such as the Uncanny Valley, what it means to be replaced essentially, or lose control of your body. There's a lot of body horror and whatnot in this series. And ultimately just the fear of the unknown and what is lurking out there just outside your window at times. So by all means, if this sounds interesting to you, please go check it out for yourself. Again, there's a link in the description, especially if you're in the mood for some analog horror scares this October. But without further ado, let's dive into the series and check out the horrors that plague Basswood County. The first video is Basswood County Humanoid Alert. The series begins with one of the big tropes of analog horror series, an emergency alert broadcast. These types of broadcasts can be seen in plenty of other series, famously in Local 58. Again, I won't talk about these tropes too much right now. We'll talk about them more at the end of the series, but there's a few that are pretty obvious that I feel are important to point out as we go. But for the most part, I'll just kind of be brushing past them, and we'll talk about them later once we're done talking about all the episodes that make up Basswood County. This emergency alert broadcast reads the following. Emergency alert system. Local authorities issued a warning. Location, Basswood County and neighboring counties. 2:26 a.m. This is a warning from Basswood County Police Department to the residents of Basswood County and neighboring counties. We have received alerts about a humanoid creature that invaded the county. It has been 11 murders till now. The victims' bodies show decapitation, absence of the arms and hands due to amputation, stabbing in the neck. It is clear that there is a hostile creature around you, and you should do the following. Close your doors and windows. Grab any weapon. Hide in your basement or the attic. These are the characteristics of the creature. Tall, long limbs, long neck, long fingers, an unnatural face, menacing eyes, and smiling. Short brown hair. Then we are presented with a photo comparing the creature to a normal human. We can see that they are much taller than an average person, and also seem to have these sort of tendrils, almost resembling roots, coming out of their bodies. They seem to move in the direction of the normal person, before the video distorts and cuts to the next scene, where we are shown drawings of the creatures based on eyewitness accounts. The first image seems pretty normal, but the next one looks a little more gaunt in expression. Figure 3 has an eerie grin spread across its face. Figure 4 looks as though the body is decaying. There are dark black pits in place of the eyes and mouth, and the skin seems to be wrinkled in clumps. Figure 5, however, shows a face with exaggerated features, staring into the camera with wide eyes and an elongated smile. The scene changes again, now to footage recorded from Ally Street in Basswood County. The footage seems to have been recorded as recently as January 21st, 2022. It's looking at a poster depicting the police sketch we saw from Figure 2 saying, "Have you seen this face?" I feel that this is a callback to the internet urban legend, "Have you seen this man?" in which there were very similar posters with an image of this man saying that many people have been seeing him in their dreams. I'm a little hesitant to call it an internet urban legend, as many actually did report to see this man in their dreams, but regardless, I believe that it is either inspired by this, or at the very least is a reference to this. If you have seen this person in the past 3 days, close your house doors, windows, and stay inside. Something has been killing people in Basswood County that looks human. The next scene seems to be the cameraman zooming into a storm drain, but we can hear this deep groan emanating from within it. And then the face from the poster appears, confirming it to be the source of the groan. We get a freeze frame of it, with text stating, "The creature." The next bit of footage comes from a victim's home. This footage comes from October 7th, 1998. We can see someone is recording in a dark hallway, the sound of laughter echoing off the walls. But upon the camera operator zooming into a room, the laughter stops. Then a face peeks its head from around the corner of the doorframe and charges at them. That bit was recorded at 4:43 a.m., but when the footage resumes, it is 3:34 p.m., and it shows a severed arm lying on the floor. Unfortunately, this arm is a bit too detailed for YouTube, so I will have to censor it. I'm sorry. However, text would appear following this that says, "What was found in the victim's basement?" A quote from Detective Jeff Albertson. And what Detective Albertson was talking about is a poster that seems to be very old depicting the creature. And to me, what this tells us is that this creature has been around a long time, or creatures relating to this, at least if it's not one creature. We'll talk about that a bit later too. Sorry to keep saying we'll talk about stuff later, but the series kind of has to unfold first, so. But instantly from episode 1, we can at least infer that a creature or creatures relating to that creature have been around this area for likely a long, long time. Footage 3 is from November 8th, 1998. The cameraman is breathing heavily as they try to sneakily record around a house. They zoom into a doorway when the creature walks through it. This time, the sort of extra appendages or tendrils that look like roots that we saw in the comparison of the creature to a human can be seen growing off of its body. But then we are shown a photo found beside a camera that belonged to the victim. A tall, heavily emaciated, almost skeletal-like body with a wide grin upon its face is standing at the end of a couch. Again, the root-like tendrils grow off its body. And this is the end of the first video of Basswood County. Like I said, story-wise, although it sets up the narrative fine, I'm not saying that, it's pretty basic, at least in terms of analog horror. What really roped me into this series, and is my favorite part of the series going forward, is the illustrations that Darkmind did to show these monsters. Yeah, they're not real people or like CGI, which like would be cool if done well, but I just love the way the monsters look, the art style that they're sort of encapsulated in. Obviously, they're meant to look realistic, but they still have this sort of style about them that is very distinct and unique to this series. And it's my favorite part. As we go further in the series, we'll see some different looking iterations of the creatures and whatnot. And I think they look really cool. I think at times they fall kind of into the Germa face meme, which is basically a joke saying that a lot of the distorted faces that are a big staple in analog horror resemble a streamer named Jerma who does these faces and whatnot. But seriously, the way the creatures and monsters all look from Darkmind's illustrations are incredible. I think they look great, and I think they're easily the strongest part of this series. And as time goes on, for the most part, I think they only get better. The next entry is Detective Jeff Albertson's tapes, 1998. The first thing we're met with is footage from a house as text appears saying, "During the investigations of one of the victim's houses, Detective Jeff Albertson found some tapes recorded by Redacted, the house owner." The police scanned the tapes and found the recordings of the victim's rooms before the breaking into his house by the anomaly. Under the supervision of Detective Jeff Albertson, the tapes were named Jeff Albertson's Footage Collection Tapes 1998, as they were collected by him. The police also found a sketchbook that belongs to the victim. These were the drawings inside of it. The drawings are similar to those seen in the first century, depicting seemingly human faces, with something off about them. The first one, for example, has a smile that is far too long, covering the entire width of its face. The second one shows the same face, but with darker eyes, a shorter smile, and heavier skin. The third is similar, but with the eyes completely blacked out. And something altogether different is happening with the face in the fourth, almost resembling something from John Carpenter's The Thing, as there's some sort of growth on its neck with these rough edges coming out of it. Then we are able to see footage collected from Detective Albertson. At first we see a car driving down a road, but this is replaced by a scene of, once again, a dark hallway, being recorded on November 2nd, 1998. A strange shrieking sound can be heard before the scene changes. But then, nearly 3 hours later, the footage resumes, and we can see the creature standing in front of a camera titled Bedroom Window. And it is clear from the next shot that this thing has made it inside of the house. Then we get a close-up shot of it from the mutated neck upwards, before the video ends. The shot of the creature outside of the window, and then the text appearing saying bedroom window camera, was a pretty effective scare. Like, that is terrifying just to picture, you're sleeping, you set up this camera because you suspected you're being watched already, and then that is the face that you find upon reviewing the footage. I mean, if the person even got to review the footage, considering they're called a victim, and that this footage was found, and we saw in the next shot that the thing made it into the house, I doubt they got to see it. But, it's just so chilling to know that thing was watching this person before sneaking into the house and then doing whatever these things do to them. Just a very effective early scare that works very well. The next entry is Identity Test, and I won't lie, even though this one is pretty important to the universe of Basswood County, personally I feel it's the worst full episode in the series, and that's just because this one really does lean heavily into the tropes and whatnot, but you'll see for yourself and make your own opinion here. The first thing we see in this entry is a clip from the movie The Scapegoat, in which a man is telling his lookalike that the masquerade is over and that it's time for him to go back to his life, before his face distorts and the scene changes. Then we get an alert that the viewing of the following tape is prohibited by law, so my bad. We are shown faces and are to decide if they are normal or not normal. The first few faces are normal, until we get to ones with distorted features, which of course checks not normal. Then we see a figure standing with their back towards us as they face a wall. Text says, "What does this face look like?" And then we are given two options. One looks warped and uncanny, and the other looks, frankly, just surprised that a photo was taken of them. But as they turn around, we can see that the first option was correct. But they turn, and when they are completely facing the camera, their body briefly stretches upwards, and text says, "I will tell you what your mind cannot comprehend," over and over again. Then we see this illustration, before very briefly flashing to a far more grotesque version of this individual. And the footage changes to show us film of who I believe is supposed to be the person from the image we just saw, as they quickly transform into what we just witnessed. The date of this is June 12th, 2002. We are then met with footage from January 12th, 1992, the earliest point of the timeline that we have witnessed thus far. It is of someone filming a shower. Hands creep around the curtain and pull it open, but their face is censored, and we are met with two options again of what they could look like. Both options are horrific, but the one on the left is the correct answer. But the text, "visual hazard," flashes, allowing us to infer that it would be harmful for us to view it. The next segment of this video says, "The failure of Jeff Albertson. The detective we know is investigating the creature deaths." Again, it is June 12th, 2002. The cameraman is filming some papers and documents regarding the creature and Detective Albertson, and there is a noise behind the person filming, and they turn around to see one of the creatures standing there in the doorway, this one wearing a hat. The footage cuts to someone filming a glass door. They go up and knock on it, but the creature's face appears after doing so. Text comes up after saying, A chamber in the woods, where they come from. A door to a realm. We know where you live. And then it is back to January 12th again, and we see someone sitting in a dark room, seemingly watching something on a screen. Then we see them on a TV, before quickly cutting back to the person, as they hear a noise and turn around only to be met with yet another illustration of a distorted face. Walking through the hallway, the cameraman encounters the creature lurking in the darkness. They mutter something quickly that I can't come close to making out, before we jump to see the cameraman walking around outside. Around a corner we can see a figure, and the cameraman is trying to record without getting caught, though it notices them, and the footage ends. I think that there are two big things to point out lore-wise in this entry. The first of which being that it pretty well confirms that there are multiple creatures. Of course, it's easy to speculate this early on. This entry showed a lot of different creatures, which confirms that there are many, and seem to have different effects on different people, sort of, as it was asking what they might look like, perhaps depending on what stage they're in and whatnot, as in the first entry, it showed the stages and how that kind of progresses, even if we don't quite understand that yet. It's not just the one that we saw in the first episode of Basswood County that's just lurking around the area. There are potentially dozens, if not hundreds, of these things in the area, all of which seemingly mean harm to the residents. But the main part I want to talk about is the failure of Jeff Albertson, as I believe from the little image that we see of Jeff where he's wearing the hat, and then in that segment it says he failed, and we turn around and see one of the creatures in the hat. I believe that thing is Jeff. I believe that his investigations led him to finding one of these things, coming face to face with it, and then it taking him over or mutating him into that, or whatever happens here. So I don't believe Jeff is the cameraman as I did when I first started watching this. I believe that he is in fact the creature who interrupts the cameraman as they were looking into presumably Jeff's findings at that point in time. I just feel like showing Jeff in that episode with a hat and then showing the first creature we've seen with a hat in the segment about Jeff is just a little too coincidental for it to be, well, a coincidence. I think that thing is Jeff. But that also led me to wonder at this point in time, are the creatures actually like infecting people, kind of like zombies do, or are they replacing people? Because it is very possible that these things basically see a human and are struggling to sort of copy what they look like, which seems to be the case regardless. But what if they're taking their place and killing them and then, just amputating and discarding them like we saw it said in the first episode that they do, and then taking their place? However, from the one individual we saw like stretching and transforming, at this point in time, I think it's safe to say that they are in fact sort of infecting human beings as opposed to just taking their place. But that was kind of my mindset at the time of watching this, was although I believed that it was that, it could really go either way, and there's a specific type of horror that comes with both. On the one hand, being haunted by a demented version of yourself sounds terrifying, knowing that it seeks to replace you and potentially take your life and trick the others who are close to you into falling prey to its illusion, only for them to befall a same fate. Or it's a type of body horror, in which you are forced to be trapped inside yourself while this thing takes you over and mutates your body in this horrific and horrible way. And it was questions like this that really kept me engaged throughout this series. And then again, of course, the tremendous look of the creatures. This one had a lot more of the Germaface meme. Again, just a lot of faces distorted. Some of them kind of made me laugh. But overall, vast majority of the creatures, I was still on board. I still thought they looked great. And still just a big fan of how everything looks in this series. The next clip is called Peaceful Life. And seeing as how this one is less than a minute long, I'll just show it. Jump scare and volume warning for anyone watching with headphones on, though.
How can you live a peaceful life? Do not care about people's opinions. Get out. Sit in a park, around the trees. where you can watch the sea. Feel the breeze in your skin. And remember, when you're not running, I'm only getting closer.
So yeah, not much to talk about there, so we're just gonna move on. And going from the shortest entry in this series to the longest, the next entry is called The Chamber. And I believe this one is probably my favorite in the series thus far, and it does the most for establishing the lore and the world of Basswood County. This is really the meat and potatoes of the series. Did I really just say that? How old am I? Anyways, it's a really great entry and is my favorite thus far in the series. Mr. Calvin Basswood discovered an odd building in the woods in 1868. He discovered it in what now is named after him, Basswood County. In his diary, he said that it looked like something from the future, a building that no one knew existed. No one knew who built it. He entered the building and saw people. They looked like human beings, but something was strange about them. They showed no emotions or response. They had unnatural limbs and tree roots coming from their backs. They began to show hostile behavior. He escaped the place. He called it the Chamber. Then a photo of one of these humanoids appears that says, "I will wear your skin as a suit." A missing persons poster for a man named Andy Stevens appears, but this image is changed to one with the tree roots growing out of him, and then we see him post-transformation. But next we're going to hear about the Philadelphia group. In 1996, a group of researchers from Philadelphia went to investigate the cases of missing people in only 1 month in Basswood County. They went across the county in Basswood Forest and recorded the journey. This is what they saw. The footage they collected begins with them filming the missing persons poster of Andy Stevens, before going on to film the chamber, which was still standing well over a century after it was discovered. And these are what they saw. Location: the chamber, right corner. There's a man under some sort of black pit. Half his head is missing, and his rib cage is exposed. Location: the chamber, left zone. Entrance from the hallway. There's a television playing a distorted face with a VCR and a tape titled Identity Test. Paper stuck on the wall. I will tell you what your mind cannot comprehend. A clock table with human remains and a skull on it. Location: the chamber, left corner. A corpse of a woman with breaks and holes in her body. Her eyes were missing and her mouth had no teeth in it. Her skin was melting like wax. Roots coming from his back. The group got out of the chamber and they went to Basswood Forest. It is clear from the constant stopping and zooming in that the group feels that they are being followed, which is pretty well confirmed when a loud noise interrupts their filming. We see various photos of the creatures that they captured during their exploration of Basswood County, before we are informed that of the 7 researchers sent out, only 2 survived. We are shown a hand-drawn map of the chamber, which has one section that says, "the window where they come from," and then more text-to-speech.
What is a human? Hello, I am Doctor. In this tape I will teach you about the human anatomy. The human is a chamber for them. I will show you how they will control your body. Here is the human head, where consciousness exists. Here are the nerves. That's how the head looks after the creatures use it. These are the small nerves. And here is the core. They create it so they can control your body. Here is the structure of a humanoid brain. The brain of a humanoid is different from the brain of the humans. It functions only to serve one purpose. Let us in. Here are the characteristics of a humanoid. Long limbs, long fingers, tall, roots coming out of its back, can extend their neck. Uncanny facial features, no emotions.
Then we are shown the transformation process, in which we can see that the longer the transformation takes place, the more human they begin to look. It takes time for them to reform the face, to look like a human, to look like you. And then again we see the various iterations of the creatures in their transformations. So this video does a lot for the lore of Basswood County, notably the chamber and especially the window within it. This is what the man with the half-severed head was standing under, laying under. I don't know if he was really standing at that point. Basically, it seems as though these things, these monsters, are coming through this window, but what's on the other side of it? It seems as though the window leads to potentially another dimension or another world, or something like that where these creatures inhabit naturally. They come through the window into our world where, for whatever reason, they're trying to look like humans and, are killing humans and are terrorizing, at the very least, the area of Basswood County, as we haven't heard of it stretching anywhere past this point. And clearly this has been an ongoing issue for the people in Basswood County since the 1800s, and we know from the very first entry it's an ongoing problem in 2022. But like I said, there are no reports of them leaving Basswood County, which can lead us to wonder, what do they want? Is it just that they haven't made it out of the area that acts as a portal from our world to theirs, presumably? Or is there something actually important other than that sort of gateway between the worlds in Basswood County? Only time will tell. The next video is the Basswood County Killer. This video serves as a PSA about a local killer the police are on the look for. The suspect appears to be one of the creatures in the very early stages of its transformation to resemble a human. A radio broadcast plays, warning the residents of the intruder, though some of the sentences seem not to match up exactly with what the text suggests.
This is the Basswood County. Warning. There's a criminal Albertson, but witnesses who lived have said that he is not a normal human being. He runs around at an unusual speed. He's not seen normally by anyone unless he starts to kill his prey. Sometimes he toys with them and does not kill them, just leaving them traumatized. And this is the last found footage of the criminal at the moment of his stop, captured by our affiliated advanced CCTV programs.
After we see the killer, the text just says, "Keep running." Then we cut to footage of what seems to be someone doing just that before coming upon a bunch of bloodied flowers. As the person filming hides around a corner, one of the creatures catches them. Then an image and then a video of a body tied up, which doesn't appear to have any limbs, before the video ends, leaving us with one more entry of the Basswood County series. This is called Before You Sleep. I feel like my soul is being dragged into that place, a parasite taking over my mind. I can't sleep anymore. I'm going insane. It seems as though these are the thoughts of someone who's been infected with whatever it is that turns the people into the creatures. I would imagine the place that they feel they're being called to is the chamber, almost serving not only as a way for them to enter our world through the window, but maybe also as a hub, sort of, a central point for all of them to meet up and do whatever they do. But upsettingly, it's clear that they are aware of what's happening to them, at least for some of their transformation. They're aware that they're losing their mind and turning in to these awful, uncanny versions of themselves. And they're hopeless to do anything about it, other than just sit there and lose their mind as they transform. Then the Basswood County police emblem is shown, and we are set to watch another informational tape, but the footage is interrupted by one of the creature's faces, asking, "Are you still awake?" And then we go back to the tape. The film changes to one of the creatures entering a room. But when the footage returns, something seems wrong. The message seems backwards from what we would expect. It seems as though the creatures have taken over the film. And then we see this, which is just the worst. And for the time being, that is it for Basswood County. Or I should say, that was the end of Basswood County at the time of recording the rest of this video. See, I had watched the whole series, took my notes on it, filmed it, edited the video, and then right as I'm almost done editing, a new entry comes out. But I still had time, obviously, to go through and talk about it and watch it and everything. So even though this part probably looks and sounds a little bit different, which I'm sorry about, I wanted the whole series to be talked about here, so even if it is a little bit different from the rest of the video, I hope you'll excuse that for the sake of me completing the series, since I still had time to do so. So the 8th, and at this point in time, most up-to-date entry of Basswood County is called the Forgotten Humanoid. We are met with the Basswood County police emblem, but very briefly we can see it flicker to one of the creatures wearing a hat. Perhaps this could be Detective Albertson, as I've been speculating to this point. That was my thought watching this at the very least. Then an illustration of another one of the creatures is shown with the following text.
He seemed off. He was normal the day before, and suddenly he was different. His face was odd, like a thing pretending to show emotions, but failed. His neck grew longer, his body was slender, walking unsteadily like he doesn't have a purpose. And then there were things like roots came out of his back. The people noticed him, and they stayed away from who they once knew. People began to disappear, day by day. He was the first suspect. They searched for him, but they didn't find him, only to find flesh and limbs scattered across the county. Decades passed, and he was forgotten, like the man who lived among them didn't even exist. He did, and the beings took him, wore his body like a skin suit. They came from another dimension, from beyond, and far from beyond. They invaded us by a portal in a building called the Chamber, the horror within humans.
The illustration gets more skeletal, and text says, the flesh is scattered, but they will bring it together. And then the remains of the monster, showing one of the creatures stuck in the ground. The next segment of the video is Roots in Nature, Roots in the Humanoids. Close your doors, they can enter your home. And then we see someone walking around with a flashlight. And then an illustration of one of the creatures in a house, before the image begins switching, while text says, there is no one left in the house. Your family is gone. And then we are informed of a way in which the creatures can more easily spread, a hole in the neck of a host. Again, this individual is Andy Stevens, who has been mentioned a few times by now, but outside of being infected by the creatures, we really know nothing about him other than that at this point in time, though he seems to be important. The next thing shown is more footage gathered by the Philadelphia group. Footage 1 is from the chamber. The first unusual thing found are 2 pictures on the floor. The first image is described as a drawing found inside the chamber, showing the portal which the beings come to Earth from. The creature transformation into 3 types of humanoids. The core, which is the part that the beings control the human body with. The second image is described as an unsettling illustration of a humanoid, possibly called Face of the Void. Footage 2 is from when the group left the chamber and went into the woods. As we know from the chamber episode, the group was followed by the creatures, and this shows more of that. Skin of a victim turned into a humanoid with a drawing next to it, showing an anatomy of the creature. Footage 3 is again outside. One of the Philadelphia group members finds an illustration on the ground of one of the humanoids. When they turn around though, they are being stalked by one of the creatures a short distance away. one that seems to be wearing a hat.
Hello?
The video cuts and the camera operator runs away. Footage 4 has the subtext "Awakening." It seems to be another photo from inside the chamber, with parts of the creature stuck to the wall. The lights flicker before the scene changes and confirms something that I was previously only speculating on. Detective Albertson, transformation. November 1998. Detective Jeff Albertson found tapes in one of the victim's house, killed by a humanoid. While watching one of the tapes, Jeff Albertson disappeared without a trace, suspected to have been transformed into a humanoid. Illustrations assuming Jeff Albertson's transformation by the Basswood County Police. And then the footage of the transformed Albertson is shown, though his face is censored briefly, before unveiling what has happened to Jeff. But the scene is changed once again to see an image of the core, the thing that infects people and that controls their body. And for the time being, that actually brings an end to Basswood County. Sorry that this part looks and sounds different. Sorry if that takes you out of the video. I just really wanted to be able to talk about this since I did still have time before having to get this video out to do that. So, my bad, guys. The next part was also filmed before this. It doesn't really change much of what I have to say. There weren't a ton of revelations in this entry besides confirming that the creatures come from another dimension and that Jeff Albertson is in fact infected, and the core is what controls the people. But yes, this is going to go back to me back before I filmed this part. Again, my bad. I'm really sorry, guys. Also, I noticed while editing this, might be a fun drinking game, for every single time that I say tropes and cliches. I didn't mean to say it that much. This video really isn't about tropes and cliches. I just wanted to talk about them in relation to the series since I think it's an important thing to talk about when criticizing media. My bad. For anyone who is annoyed by how much I say that, I was too, and it's gonna get worse. So, yeah. Anyways, another outstanding entry from Basswood County. I'm so glad to see that the series is back, and I really liked this episode. I think it's really sticking with the pace, especially with episodes set by the chamber and whatnot. So yeah, super glad to see the series is back. I'm gonna hand this back over to Past Me. Sorry about that again, and thanks, guys. And overall, I really enjoyed this series. I thought it was great. I was hooked pretty well the whole time, but there are pros and cons to this series that I feel need to be talked about. I'll start with the negatives. This series falls victim to much of the tropes and cliches that are present throughout analog horror just as a whole. It's not necessarily Basswood County's fault, it's just kind of part of it anymore. The emergency broadcasts, the PSAs, the distorted face that sometimes is scary but other times is funny, or at the very least is a little overdone by this point. These, for people who haven't really seen analog horror, are probably fine. They don't know that these are tropes or cliches that many of us get sick of, but overall, yeah, anytime I'm watching an analog horror series and I see, like, emergency broadcast, I get a little bored. But overall, I feel Basswood County did fine with these. Of course, they're present, and of course, I'm used to them by now. A lot of similarities to series like Local 58 and Mandela Catalog in particular, but Basswood County did enough to stand out on its own, at least for me. So of course, there's going to be tropes that we become used to seeing in analog horror. Do I roll my eyes at it a lot? Absolutely. Do I love it more when series are more original and unique and still are able to be under that umbrella of analog horror while also doing their own things? Of course. And for me, this scratched that itch for analog horror. I'm not saying that this means the critiques against it are invalid. Of course, I would love to see this series be more original at times, and the parts where it is original and is telling its story, I think are absolutely the best parts. But we do have to point out those tropes, and in no way am I saying that the series is bad or anything. I really liked this series, actually. I thought it was great. I just think it's important that we talk about those more just overall with analog horror, and I'm just kind of picking on Basswood County for those couple little things. But when the series is doing its own thing, it stands out and is really great, and I want to talk about the positives. I really like the story of Basswood County, that as early as 1868, this essentially modern building was found in the woods of an, at the time, uninhabited area, and the person walked in and was so freaked out that he left, still set up camp around that area and founded Basswood County. But it just leads so many questions, like where did this building come from, how long's it been there, why is it there, what's going on with the window, has the chamber been touched since, like are people going in and doing things, or is it just these creatures that are bringing stuff in and out of the place? It's really interesting and is ultimately my biggest question with the series. And then in the 90s, it seems as though creature activity is really amped up for whatever reason. It seems these things are coming out more and more and attacking more and more people, leading to full-scale police investigations, notably by Jeff Albertson, who I believe is infected by whatever this disease or whatever it is that causes the people to turn into the creatures is kind of halting his work. Maybe someone is set to pick that up, as we saw someone filming around his room, assuming my theory's correct and that the creature in the hat is the mutated version of Jeff. And that's all in 2002, and then things go quiet till the very first entry of the series, 2022, where these creatures are still present and around. So are they really attacking that much? Did it just amp up in the 90s and one detective noticed it? Has it been this way for the last 30 years or so? Or has it been this way the whole time and people just became privy to it? I just have so many questions about this series, and I'm so excited to see where it goes because I'm invested. When the series really stood out on its own and decided to tell its own story, it was absolutely fantastic. And so much of that is just because of how these creatures look. Yes, they're the distorted faces or whatever that we're used to seeing in analog horror, but Dark Mind's art is so good and sold me on these creatures so much. So yes, does this series fall victim to many of the stereotypes in analog horror? Of course, you're going to be hard-pressed to find some that don't. But overall, I feel the positives outweigh it, and maybe you'll disagree. For me, this October, I just really wanted to watch a pretty inoffensive analog horror, and I got one that delivered on more expectations than I had. One that leaves me excited to see what's coming next. And ultimately, that's all I could really ask for, so I hope you all enjoyed this series as well, and I hope you're also excited to see where it goes going forward. So thank you all for taking the time to watch this video. I super appreciate it. As usual, just want to thank you guys for all the support on everything. Truly, just every day, that I load up the little YouTube app on my phone, I'm just blown away at all the support from all of you, and it's so awesome, all of you watching, and I just can't thank you guys enough for everything. And truly, it means so much to me that you guys are watching and supporting. So I won't take too much more of your time. So everyone, go enjoy their October. Watch horror movies. Go to Halloween parties. Be safe if you do. I mean it. I'm coming for you. Don't drink and drive. And everyone have a great October. Engage with all the horror media you want to engage with. Do the stuff you want to do to celebrate. Have fun. Be safe. And I hope you all have a great day. Thank you.